In this Baldur's Gate 3 video, we're going to be talking about feats. We're going to be going through each feat of the game, talking about why you might take it, why you might not, whether it's worth it or not, and just some general information about feats. So you probably know by now, but if you didn't know, at every 4 levels of a class, you will gain a feat. This means that if you are a single class, you'll gain a feat at level 4, level 8, and level 12, but if you multi-class, the levels in which you gain feats will depend on how long it takes you to gain 4 levels of a class. This means that single-class characters will always gain 3 feats in Baldur's Gate 3, but multi-class characters, unless they multi-class every 4 levels or at 8 levels and 4 levels, will only gain 2 feats. For instance, if they take something like 7 levels of Paladin and 5 levels of Warlock, they would only gain 2 feats, so they lose out a little bit unless they hit these exact breakpoints of 8 and 4 or 4, 4, and 4. So let's get into the feats themselves. The first one is probably the one most people will take in this game most frequently on their characters, and that is Ability Improvement. Ability Improvement allows you to assign 2 ability points however you want in your 6 abilities. And this is particularly good because characters gain a lot from increasing the ability modifier of whatever they use primarily. For instance, if you are a Warlock, your primary ability is going to be Charisma. Increasing your ability by +1 will give you +1 to your Eldritch Blast attack rolls, +1 to your Eldritch Blast damage rolls if you have Agonizing Blast, which most Warlocks will take. It will also give you +1 to your Charisma saving throws, as well as +1 to your dialogue checks when using Deception, Persuasion, Performance, or Intimidation. And it will also increase the difficulty class of your spells that target enemy abilities by 1. That is a lot that you gain for 1 feat, and this is even better on Dexterity, because in the case of Dexterity, you'll get an increase to your attack rolls, an increase to your damage rolls, you'll gain an increase to your initiative, you'll gain an increase to your armor class, you'll gain an increase to your dexterity saving throws, which a lot of AoE spells target dexterity, and you'll gain an increase to your dexterity skill checks, which are acrobatics, sleight of hand, and stealth. Keep in mind, though, that you can only take any one ability score up to 20 using this feat, even though you can get higher than 20 using items, which means that most characters will only use this once or twice on their primary ability, and then either use it on a secondary ability score, or take a 3rd feat in something else. Assuming, of course, they're a single-class character, otherwise they might just take 2 ability scores on a multi-class character since they may not gain 3 feats. Next up is the Actor feat, and the Actor feat gives you +1 to your Charisma score up to a maximum of 20 and also doubles your proficiency bonus in Deception and Performance checks. So I highly recommend, if you plan on taking this feat, that you set your Charisma to 17 in whatever class you're playing that's Charisma-based, and then moving it to 18 with this to increase your ability modifier perfectly. And keep in mind, too, that the proficiency bonus that's doubled for Deception and Performance checks will apply even if you don't have proficiency in Deception and Performance. So what this means is you're better off not taking proficiency in these 2 skills during character creation, because then you would only gain +2 to them from this feat, whereas you'd gain +4 if you don't have proficiency already. Moving on to Alert, this gives you +5 bonus to your initiative, and you can't be surprised. This means that you are almost certainly going to go first in most combats. And what's really good about that is if you're playing like a Gloomstalker that needs to take advantage of that, or if you're playing like an Assassin that needs to attack before enemies attack you, this can be really strong for you because it can almost guarantee that you're going to gain advantage on your first attack. And also not being able to be surprised means that, like, if you get ambushed or something like that, you won't forfeit your first turn when this happens. The problem is that, like, you know, any of these characters that'll be playing this way, like rogues or rangers, generally have high initiative anyway from their dexterity, so this might be a bit overkill, and you don't get surprised all that often in this game. So even though it seems like it could be great, I'm not sure it's worth, trading an ability score improvement for. Next is Athlete, which increases either your strength or dexterity by 1, and it also makes it so when you're prone, standing up uses less movement, and also your jump distance is increased by 50%. Obviously, the 2 best things here are the ability score improvement plus the jump distance. Sometimes in combat, particularly if you're playing a strength character or dexterity character, you need to jump up somewhere to get above your target, or maybe you need to jump down to something to get to it, and that can really help. I mean, 50% is a huge increase to your jump distance, and you're still getting strength and dexterity. So if you set your strength or dexterity to like 17 and then took this would not be a bad pickup. Next up is Charger, which gives you the Charger weapon attack and Charger shove actions that also consume your bonus action at the same time. And you might think that's terrible when you first read it, but Charger weapon attack actually increases the damage you deal significantly, and also what this allows you to do is reach a target that you normally wouldn't get to in a turn with just your movement, because you can move your full distance and then charge into the target a good distance away and deal more damage when you're doing it. So there is definitely a case to be made for this, particularly if you are a melee character that has a hard time getting to the target that you're trying to get to. This can really help with that. Crossbow Expert is going to make it so that you don't have a disadvantage when you're attacking with a crossbow when an enemy is in melee range of you, and also makes it so your piercing shot weapon action inflicts gaping wounds for twice as long, which I think is 4 turns. And the issue with this feat is that you shouldn't be near melee enemies when you're ranged attacking. If this keeps happening to you to the point you need to take a feat, you need to work on your positioning. There's a problem with your positioning. You shouldn't waste a feat to pick this up. And honestly, you can't wait around to deal more piercing damage to an enemy with gaping wounds over that many turns. You need to kill them as quickly as possible, and, you know, a couple extra turns of that lasting is not good enough to take as a feat in my opinion, so I don't recommend this one. Defensive Duelist makes it so that when you're attacking while wielding a finesse weapon that you're proficient with, you can use your reaction to add your proficiency bonus to your armor class, possibly causing the attack of an enemy to miss. This is actually not bad. Usually when you're using a finesse weapon, you're probably using 2 finesse weapons, so this is usually on a dual wielding character, usually, not always, which means they're not using a shield, so their armor class is typically going to be lower. And then this is going to help you kind of offset that by allowing you to use your reaction, which is, you know, once every round, to basically help protect you against one attack. It's not a bad pickup at all. Just keep in mind that if you pick up like ability score improvement and gain a dexterity, you would gain 1 armor class anyway, which if this is the beginning of the game, this is level 4, would be basically half the armor class you would gain from this, because this would give you +2 to your armor class, and dexterity give you +1, plus all the other benefits. But if it's later in the game and your proficiency bonus is like +3 or +4, then perhaps this would be a better take, because you could add 4 armor class, and that's really, really good at that point. So maybe take this one later on in the game if you're going to take it, probably not early in the game. And also keep in mind you need at least 13 dexterity to use it, but again, if you're using finesse weapons, that shouldn't be a problem. The dual wielder feat, in my opinion, is mainly for characters that are dual wielding using their strength rather than dexterity, because if you're a dexterity character and you're dual wielding, you'd just be better off taking dexterity here to gain the +1 armor class, +1 attack, +1 damage, etc. But if you're a strength character and you're wearing something like heavy armor and all your points are in strength, and dexterity isn't going to give you any extra armor, this might be a good choice for you in that case. I'm not sure I would take it over something like strength, which increases your attack and damage, but you could take it. You're probably only going to take it on like a strength-based two-weapon fighter, probably. This brings us to Dungeon Delver. Dungeon Delver is actually a really good feat in my opinion. It gives you advantage on perception checks made to detect hidden objects and have, you know, advantage on saving throws made to resist traps. You usually have one character in your party with high perception that's going to be checking all this stuff. It's usually like your rogue or your ranger, maybe your bard or something like that. And giving them advantage just makes things easier for you. You can use enhance ability to give them an advantage to spot these things, which could save you a feat. But if you don't have someone that can cast enhance ability, it's not a bad one to take. But you could basically circumvent this by using enhance ability with the Owl's Wisdom on your character. So it's kind of a waste of a feat if you have that, in my opinion. Next up is Durable, which increases your constitution by 1 and also makes it so that you regain full HP when you short rest as opposed to half resting. And the issue with this feat is that most characters, if they have a chance to improve their abilities, will improve their primary ability, because the best defense is a good offense in this game. If you kill an enemy, they can't attack you. So improving your chances of connecting is probably better. And also, if your other characters don't gain full HP when resting, but one character does, is it really worth it? And that's the sort of thing you need to figure out. So I don't think this is really worth it unless maybe you're taking it on all of your characters and you're playing on the hardest difficulty and you're struggling. But even then, there's probably better feats. Elemental Adept is interesting because it's basically going to make it so you bypass resistance on an enemy when using a specific damage type. There are a couple subclasses in this game that specialize in specific damage types, like Light Clerics are very fire-oriented, and Storm Druids are very thunder-oriented, so you might take it on one of those 2 characters, but otherwise, I don't think there's too many characters that are going to take this, and additionally, there aren't so many spells that target the armor class late game with your spells. Most of them target abilities, and this has to make it so that when you roll, you can't roll a 1, which means your spell has to target armor class. So I think the vast majority of characters are not going to take this, although you could on those 2 classes, particularly early on in the game. And then we come to Great Weapon Master. What this does is it makes it so when you land a critical hit or kill a target with a melee weapon attack, you can make another melee weapon attack as a bonus action on that turn. This is absolutely outstanding, and if you saw our video on combat, you know that it's important to try and make the most out of each of your turns, trying to use your action, bonus action, movement, everything that you can possibly use if you need it. And this is a great way to give melee characters something to do with their bonus action if they don't have anything else. And the second part of this feat is attacks with heavy melee weapons you're proficient with can deal an additional 10 damage at the cost of -5 attack roll. So this is toggleable, which is great because that means like in situations where maybe you have advantage or you have really high hit chance that you can toggle it on for extra damage if you're using a two-handed weapon and toggle it off if you don't. But keep in mind that this only applies to heavy melee weapons. It doesn't apply to like one-handed melee weapons or non-heavy melee weapons. So the first part's going to apply to any melee character, while the second part only applies to heavy weapons, which means that you're more likely to take this on a heavy weapons character because you get the full benefit of the whole thing. And barbarians typically take this because they can use reckless attack, which gives them advantage on their melee attack rolls, which can offset that -5 attack roll penalty a lot, and then they just get that 10 damage a lot on their attacks. Heavily armored gives you +1 to your strength and also gives you armor proficiency with heavy armor. The caveat here is that you have to have medium armor proficiency already. So this would be like on a ranger or maybe a cleric or something like that, but both of those classes have ways of gaining heavy armor. So I don't think this is a particularly useful feat, and if you want strength, I would just take ability improvement or another feat that provides strength. Heavily armored makes it so that you increase your strength by +1, and it makes it so incoming damage from non-magical attacks is also decreased by 3 while you're wearing heavy armor. This requires heavy armor proficiency. Obviously, you're going to be wearing heavy armor if you're taking this. And this is not a bad one to take, in my opinion, because you do gain 1 strength. So if you had 17 at the beginning, you could get to 18 with this. And also, it's going to reduce like physical damage, basically, right? So if you're like a melee character and you're tanking enemies, it's going to further reduce the damage you take. You wouldn't take this on a barbarian because they don't use heavy armor. You might take it on a paladin or fighter. Be a good choice there, probably. Or maybe like a heavy armor ranger if you have one. Or even a cleric. Lightly armored is going to provide you armor proficiency with light armor and increase your strength and dexterity by 1. And in my opinion, this is not a very good feat, because if you're like a spellcaster who wants light armor, you can pick that up easily from a race. And you don't really need strength and dexterity as a spellcaster all that much. Dexterity could help you with armor class. But you can pick up this proficiency from a race really easily, or, multi-classing with something else. So you'd be better off with a feat here, and I don't see any martial class, like a rogue even, are taking this because they already have light armor proficiency. So does every other martial class, so it's not a great feat. This brings us to the lucky feat, which is probably one of the most slept-on feats in the game, in my opinion. This gives you 3 luck points that you can use to gain advantage on attack rolls, ability checks, or saving throws, or make an enemy reroll their attack roll. And you can do this 3 times in between each long rest. And what's really great about this feat is that it's a reaction, meaning that if you're going to miss your attack, the game will say, you rolled a blah. Do you want to use this to try and gain advantage to try and hit your target? So you're not using these dice anticipating missing. You're using them only if you miss, or if you fail an ability check, or fail a saving throw, or if an enemy's going to hit you or hit you with a spell, then you can use it to make them, re-roll that so that you don't fail, etc. So it's just really, really strong in my opinion, because you only need to use these when you need them. You don't have to guess when to use them. And they can really change the outcome of a battle, particularly some of the harder fights in this game. And because you long rest, in between every 2 battles or so, you're going to get these back pretty quick, in my opinion. And I think most people are going to sleep on this. This is a really, really strong one to try and take. And I would highly recommend at least having 1 character to do this. So the Mage Slayer feat makes it so that when an enemy casts a spell at you when they're standing next to you, you have advantage on saving throws, and you can use a reaction to immediately make an attack against the caster. Additionally, enemies you hit will have disadvantage on concentration saving throws, meaning you can disrupt their concentration on spells more easily if you have this feat. This isn't a terrible feat, but it's also not a great feat either, and that's because, usually early on in the game, you're just going to kill spellcasters outright. They don't have a ton of health normally. And whether you break their concentration or not, it's not that big of a deal because they're dead, so they don't have concentration anymore. And this is very situational. Sometimes you're not up against the mage. You can't get there because of melee units or other ranged units. So I wouldn't advise getting this one early in the game, but later in the game, if you find yourself fighting deadly mages and stuff like that and you're having a difficult time, you might want to pick it up. But early on, I don't think it's necessary. This brings us to Magic Initiate Bard. This is going to make you learn 2 cantrips and 1 level 1 spell from the Bard spell list, which scale with Charisma. So if you're not a Charisma class, it's probably not going to be as useful for you, but you could still take it anyway. And I think probably the reason to take this is if you need some support spells on a character like Paladin, Warlock, or Sorcerer. Maybe you don't have a dedicated healer in your group. Maybe you want to pick up Cure Wounds. Maybe you want to pick up Healing Word. Paladins don't have Healing Word, which would be a good pickup for them in a lot of cases. Or maybe you're playing a Sorcerer and you want to pick up Healing Word or Cure Wounds to be able to heal in between fights because you don't have a healer. These are really the situations that I see taking this. I don't see too many other reasons to do it. And Magic Initiate Cleric's going to give you 2 cantrips and 1 level 1 spell from the Cleric spell list, but these scale off Wisdom. So this is probably going to be Wisdom characters that pick this up. I could see maybe a Druid picking up something like Inflict Wounds if they want a close range damaging spell, or maybe Guiding Bolt if they want another option for a long range spell. But there isn't too many reasons to pick this up because you're probably going to have to be a Ranger or a Druid to do it. And if you're a Ranger, you're probably going to be attacking with your weapons and not flinging offensive spells. So unless you're using like Healing Word with it, I don't really see a lot of point to pick this up. When it comes to Magic Initiate Druid, you're going to learn 2 cantrips and 1 level spell that scale off Wisdom. And again, you know, if you're playing Cleric, you have access to a lot of these spells already. If you're playing Ranger, you do as well. You might want to pick up Healing Word on Ranger. If you don't have it, that could be one option there. But otherwise, there isn't a lot of reason to pick this. Maybe pick up Goodberry, but I don't see a lot of players taking this in the majority of cases. Magic Initiate Sorcerer is going to give you 2 cantrips and a level 1 spell that scale with Charisma. And I could see potentially like a Paladin taking this if they want to pick up like an offensive spell that's not in their spell list, like something like Magic Missile or Burning Hands, or maybe Witch Bolt or Thunderwave. They really don't have a lot of offensive spells in BG3 because besides their smite spells, which are just basically melee attacks, so I could see them doing that. Can't really see too many other classes picking this up because of the Charisma modifier scaling. Warlock's already going to have access to this. Sorcerer's already going to have access to this. Maybe if you're a Bard and wanted some offensive spells as well, you might. Like maybe you want Magic Missile on your Bard, something like that. I could see that. But if you're not playing Bard or Paladin, you probably won't take this. This takes us to Magic Initiate Warlock, where you can learn 2 cantrips and 1 level 1 spell from their spell list, and these scale off Charisma. I feel like out of all the Magic Initiates, this is probably going to be the one that's selected the most because you can take Eldritch Blast on a Sorcerer, Bard, or Paladin. That can give Paladin a nice ranged attack that's based off Charisma, or the same for Bard and Sorcerer. It can give them a reliable cantrip that deals significant damage. It won't have all the Eldritch invocations that, you know, the Warlock will gain, but it's still a very reliable one. And at level 5, it's going to gain 2 beams regardless of whether you're a Warlock or not. So that's a very effective long-range cantrip at level 5. You can target 2 different targets. So I could see, you know, any of those 3 classes taking it for that. And also Paladins might want something like Armor of Agathis, which is going to give them 5 temporary hit points and deal 5 cold damage to any creature that hits them with a melee attack. And this is until long rest, so you cast this on your Paladin or your character, and then that's just going to be a constant effect that happens throughout every combat until you long rest. That's really, really strong in my opinion, so I could definitely see Paladins taking this for Eldritch Blast and for this spell. Magic Initiate Wizard gives you 2 cantrips and a level 1 spell from the Wizard spell list that are cast with the Intelligence modifier. I think the reason to pick this up, depending on what class you're playing, is for more cantrips or Find Familiar. Some classes will just want Find Familiar, like you can just have one. If you even took one on every character, think that you could have 4 familiars out at the same time, so that could be pretty deadly. Martial Adept essentially gives you 1 superiority die that you can use one of 2 maneuvers every short rest, and you can pick from a list of these. These are similar to the Battle Master, and I don't think this is really worth it in my opinion. You're going to get to use this like once per combat. It's not a huge amount what you're giving up versus what you're gaining. I don't think it's worth it in this case. If you want to use superiority die on your character, I would suggest getting 3 levels of Fighter and just taking Battle Master, because that way you can actually have 4 dice to use. So I think this is probably not a great pickup for most classes. Medium Armor Master removes the disadvantage on stealth checks when wearing medium armor, and also makes it so that the extra armor you gain from dexterity that normally caps at +2 on medium armor is raised to +3. So you basically gain 1 extra armor class when wearing medium armor if you're a dexterity focused character, and you won't have disadvantage on stealth checks. This is not a bad feat in my opinion if you want to play like a heavily dexterity focused character, but you want to get some more armor from medium armor and extra dexterity, and you also still want to be stealthy. It's not a bad one to pick up. I think it really depends on what sort of character you're making though. For instance, if you're playing like a thief rogue, you could go into stealth, attack, and then go back into stealth, so you don't really need the armor class in that case. Or maybe if you're playing a rogue in general, but maybe if you're playing a ranger and being a stealthy ranger, maybe you would want those. Mobile essentially increases your movement speed, so you're going to move farther, and difficult terrain doesn't slow you down when you dash, and if you move away from a melee attack, you won't provoke attacks of opportunity. I feel like this is probably best on like a rogue or a caster character, because melee units don't typically move away from targets that can opportunity attack them, but like a rogue that's ranged or maybe a caster would, and then you can't be attack of opportunity when you do it. You don't have to use disengage, so you could just move away and then cast your ranged spell and be fine. So there might be a case to do this on your caster, but probably not until you've like already maxed out your spellcasting ability modifier. Moderately Armored gives you armor proficiency with medium armor and shields and increases either your strength or dexterity by +1. Just keep in mind that you have to have proficiency and light armor in order to take this feat. And if you didn't choose a race during character creation like human or half-elf or something like that gives you light armor proficiency, you'll probably take this on either a bard, warlock, or a rogue in order to gain some medium armor proficiency and to be able to use shields. Warlocks can, Pact of the Blade Warlocks can use this very effectively if they go like Rapier and Shield with their pact weapon. Or they can use Eldritch Blast at range and just have medium armor and use a shield to further boost their armor class. Bards often melee and also cast spells, so having medium armor is not bad, or even they just have more protection at range. It's not bad for them. And of course, rogues could gain it as well, although I think rogues that are playing like, you know, a sword and shield style of play, if they really want to go sword and shield, will probably multi-class with a class that will give them medium armor and shield proficiency, so I think it's less likely to be seen on rogues. Performer gives you musical instrument proficiency and increases your charisma by 1 up to a maximum of 20. Bards already have this, so I think this is more likely to be on like a paladin, warlock, or maybe a sorcerer in order to be able to play a musical instrument that distracts people and they come running to them, so there other people can get behind and like lockpick or loot people, etc. You know, get somewhere they shouldn't be. So this is likely to be one of those 3 classes that might take this, especially if they have like 17 charisma during character creation. Polearm Master makes it so that when you attack with a glaive, halberd, quarterstaff, or spear, you can use a bonus action to attack with the butt of your weapon. This doesn't do a ton of damage, but what's really strong here is that you can make an attack of opportunity when a target comes in range. When you're a melee character and enemies come to you, you have to wait for them to leave your range in order to gain an attack of opportunity normally, and that doesn't always happen, particularly if a melee unit comes into your range. So this is really, really strong because this is allow you to use your attack of opportunity a lot more often. Maybe you're playing like a Vengeance Paladin or something like that that gains movement speed when you do an attack of opportunity. Now you're going to be doing an attack of opportunity constantly, and you can gain more movement speed. So if you have effects that trigger off attack of opportunity, this is really strong, and you just want to use your attack of opportunity more effectively. This is a great pickup if you're using one of these weapon types. Resilient increases one ability by 1 to a maximum of 20 and gives you proficiency in that ability saving throw. So this is kind of like half of ability improvement, except the ability you choose here you will also gain proficiency in. So you definitely want to make sure you're choosing one that you don't already have proficiency in with your character, because each class has 2 of these to begin with. But, you know, usually dexterity and wisdom are great choices here. A lot of spells target these, a lot of negative effects target these. So I'd recommend taking dexterity or wisdom. You might need to do some planning ahead so that, like, you know, your dexterity is like 13 or something and it goes to 14, or your wisdom's like 9 and goes to 10, or 11 and goes to 12, something like that ahead of time. Or you could respec and, you know, set it up properly. Ritual Caster allows you to learn 2 ritual spells of your choice, stuff like Speak with the Dead, Find Familiar, Speak with Animals, Disguise Self, stuff like that. And keep in mind that ritual spells, when you use them out of combat, don't consume a spell slot. So you can use these as much as you want outside of combat. And they're really utility type spells. Like if you have like, you know, something or someone that allows you to speak with the dead, or you have Find Familiar already, or maybe you speak with animals already, someone in your group already does that, this is less useful to you. But if you don't, this would be a good way to get some of those useful things. So Savage Attacker is a feat that makes it so when you make a weapon attack, you roll your damage die twice and use the higher of the results. And it doesn't say here, but this actually only applies to melee attacks. You can test this out and you'll notice immediately that range damage is not affected by this at all. So this only applies to melee attacks. And typically this re-rolls the die or dice of the weapon that you're using only and doesn't apply any other benefit. For instance, if you're doing like a melee sneak attack, it will not re-roll the dice of your sneak attack damage to give you better damage. However, one case it actually does work is when using the Divine Smite melee attack of the Paladin class or using any of their Smite spells. It will actually re-roll all of the damage dice that you do in this case, giving you the highest number of the 2 numbers you roll for each dice, and that's actually really good in my opinion. So this is definitely a feat I would suggest taking on a Paladin at some point, either, you know, at like level 8 or level 12, but definitely at some point I would suggest taking it, and this might be the only class you use this on. So Sentinel makes it so when an enemy within melee range of you attacks an ally, you can use your reaction to make a weapon attack against that enemy, and that ally must not also have the Sentinel feat. So you can't just put this on all your party and put them all together, etc. But this is kind of situational, right? Depending on whether you have another melee unit, then you guys stick together on a target. You might not find this as useful. However, the other benefit is that you gain advantage on opportunity attacks, meaning that you're much, much more likely to connect on them. And when you hit a creature with an opportunity attack, it can't move for the rest of the turn, which is phenomenal, right? Because this means if it's a ranged unit, it can't get out of melee range of you, so its attacks are going to have disadvantage if they decide to attack you. And if it's a melee unit trying to get away from you to attack a squishy, they can't move and do that anymore. So this is really, really strong in my opinion. You definitely want to consider picking this up on your melee characters, or at least one of your melee characters. So Sharpshooter makes it so your ranged weapon attacks don't receive the -2 penalty when you attack a target that's higher than you in elevation, and also gives you the toggleable feature to take a -5 attack penalty on your attack roll but deal an additional 10 damage if the hit connects. And you might use this on something like a rogue that can gain advantage very easily on their attacks, offsetting this -5 penalty by going into stealth with a bonus action. Or you might use it on a ranger or a fighter that can gain archery that would help offset some of this too with +2 to their weapon attacks with ranged weapons. But again, this is situational, right? Like if you have advantage on the target through some other effect, it'd be a good time to pop it on and deal some extra damage, and then you can toggle it off if you don't feel confident your shots are going to land. So I highly recommend that one on a rogue or any ranged character that predominantly does ranged damage. Shield Master gives you a +2 bonus to your dexterity saving throws while wielding a shield. Typically armors that are wearing like heavy armor and using a shield that are frontliners like paladins, fighters, stuff like that, don't typically have high dexterity to begin with, so this can really help protect them from taking damage. Additionally, if a spell forces you to make a dexterity saving throw, you can use your reaction to shield yourself and diminish the effects of the damage. On a failed saving throw, you only take half damage, and on a successful saving throw, you don't take any damage if you do this. So you can help wipe out some of the damage that you would take if you're using a shield in your frontliner. It's not a bad one to pick up if you're trying to make like a tanky character that just absorbs hits and spells and doesn't die easily. Skill just gives you proficiency in 3 skills of your choice, and frankly, this really depends on your party composition. If you have an optimal party composition, then you probably don't need this, but if you're running something less optimal because you really like specific characters and you just don't care or whatever, then you might consider picking this up on one character. Spell Sniper makes it so you can learn a cantrip, including Eldritch Blast, and the number you need to roll here is reduced for spells to critically hit by 1. So normally a spell would need 20 to critically hit, now it could be 19 to critically hit as well, and that can stack with other effects. The issue with that, though, is a lot of spells are cast against a character's abilities and you're not actually rolling. So this will only apply to spells where you're rolling. So unless you're using a lot of spells that target the armor class of the enemy, you're not going to get as much out of this one. Tavern Brawler makes it so that when you make an unarmed attack, use an improvised weapon, or throw something, your strength modifier is added twice to the damage and attack rolls that you make, and you also get to put an ability point into strength or constitution. This is obviously going to benefit strength-based characters more than anyone, particularly barbarians who use improvised weapons and throw things a lot, and getting that extra strength would be really great for them. Unarmed attacks typically use strength, but if you're playing as a monk, they can also use dexterity. And monks typically have very high dexterity because of a lot of their class features, so this isn't going to be that great on a monk, because they're typically not going to have that highest strength. Tough makes it so that your hit point maximum is increased by 2 for every level you gain. This isn't terrible like on a tank character or maybe a really squishy character that has like very low health to begin with. Keep in mind you could take ability improvement, put it in constitution, you'd get half this anyway. You'd also gain +1 to your constitution saving throws, and you'd also gain +1 to your concentration checks if you're a spellcaster. So that would probably be better than tough in most cases. Warcaster is a phenomenal feat that gives you advantage on saving throws to maintain concentration on your spells. This is really good on melee characters or characters that kind of get in the thick of combat but use a lot of concentration like paladins and clerics, so you might consider taking it on them. It also makes it so you can use your reaction to cast Shocking Grasp at a target moving out of melee range, so sort of like an attack of opportunity but slightly different. And Shocking Grasp has advantage on targets with metal armor, so it's even more likely to connect if the target is well armored against them. Weapon Master is a feat that gives you proficiency in any 4 weapons of your choice and also 1 strength or dexterity to a maximum of 20. And if you're min-maxing your character, you should be getting your proficiency from either your race or your class or some combination of multi-classing. You shouldn't waste a feat on that, in my opinion. There are much better feats out there. So I don't suggest selecting this one, and if there's a proficiency that you really need, try and look at re-optimizing your character with your classes or a different race in order to get it. So that wraps up our video on feats. I hope you guys found it useful. I know there's a lot of stuff in this game that can be overwhelming. I'm trying to break it down all video by video to try and simplify it, help you guys tackle one thing at a time. If you have more information about these that I didn't mention, please leave it in the comments. And if you have questions, let me know and I will try and answer them.